Hey, it looks like the new community forums are on air. Check them out and join at forum.toms3d.org. They're free open forums with over 4,000 posts about making and 3D printing already. But in this video, we're going to make this cast on air sign using 3D printed molds and 42 LED bulbs. Again, thank you to Atom3D for sponsoring this project. Just like part 1, we've printed all our parts on the Monoprice Delta Pro, which is made by Atom3D. Before we go into how these were designed, let me show you how they work. So in part 1, I've already hinted at how I was going to print these parts. So as you can see, these are two different materials. We've got our outer shell, which is a flexible material. This is a Printer Pro Flex Hard. And as with every flexible material, it's not going to print as cleanly as a rigid one. But considering the Delta Pro is a Bowden system, it did pretty well for printing a 1.75mm flexible filament. So these are the outer shells, and these are actually going to be in contact with our cast material. And we've got all these plugs right here, and these are going to fit into all these holes. There we go. So the idea is this was more printable. This was printed with this face down, and this is going to be easier to demold afterwards to just pull this entire thing back out. So as it is, if all we were using was this shell, this thing would probably collapse and deform once we're starting pouring. So we've got these solid PLA inserts, and these are going to fit in here like so. And then they're going to be glued down to our baseboard, which is right over there, and we're going to cast on top of this. So our cast material is only going to be in contact with the flexible parts. So when demolding, we can pull out the PLA cores, and then we can peel off the flexible shell. And just in case you're wondering why we need all these plugs and what's going to go into the cavity that those create in the final casting, well, we've got all these LED bulbs and all these holders here. So these are G4 sockets for these LED bulbs, and these go in here, and each of these plugs basically fits that exact shape. So we're going to be recessing these LED bulbs by a bit, but in the end, that is exactly what's going to fit in here. I'm going to fix these into the cast part once we're done, once I've pulled these plugs out, and then we're going to be able to plug in these bulbs. So now you know what all these bits are going to do. Let's check out how I've designed these in Fusion 360. The design for this project was actually surprisingly simple. I started out by drawing out the bounding box of how big our block of concrete would be. I used that as a size reference for the on-air text, and then extruded the letters into solid blocks. These are going to be the exact negative geometry that we're going to have in the final cast. I duplicated each of the letters and then used the shell feature within Fusion 360 to create that outer flexible shell that's going to be in contact with our actual cast. To get the parts that are going to slip into that flexible shell, I used the combine feature to subtract that outer shell from our PLA parts, so we're just left with the inserts that are going to fit in perfectly. Next, I modeled up the plug that's going to create space for each of the bulbs, but I didn't model it in place where the actual bulbs are going to go. I just modeled it somewhere in the design. Next, I created a sketch on each of the letters that would serve as a guide for where the light bulbs would go. I then used the move and copy feature to copy a plug to the start of that sketch, and then used the pattern on path feature to equally space out the bulbs and the inserts along that sketch I just drew up. So with each letter, I ended up with a handful of plugs just sitting in free air. And again, I used the combine feature to subtract each plug from our flexible shell, which again is going to create that perfect fit. And that really is all the design that I had to do. I probably should have added a draft angle so that these parts come out a bit more easily out of the mold, but it should be fine. Alright, so these are all cleaned up. They fit pretty snugly. So the PLA obviously is non-elastic, so it kind of sticks in here pretty darn hard. For the fact that these were printed with no tolerance, with no, well, slot between these parts, it's pretty good. So I think next thing we can do is to make our box, our base mold.
Jetzt richtig geil. Also ich bin absolut und habe dann rausgefunden, Bestand das haben wir tatsächlich Sinn. Das war halt
So you can see how this is all going to come together. I've drawn out a bit of a layout grid on this baseboard. This looks good. This looks done. You can see like the on-air kind of font looks well spaced. There we go. That's better. And I think for this one, I'm not going to screw down the outer shell. I'm just gonna hot glue it, right? That should come apart pretty nicely. You know, assembling all these bits is actually quite satisfying. They plop together and these all fit in there really nicely. So yeah, now it's time to glue all these down and then we can go to casting. I actually don't want these stuck down too well. I want to be able to break these off once I'm done with the cast. Not sure if that's gonna work at all. This is all glued up. This is more solid than I was expecting. It may or may not ever come apart again, but we're ready for the pour. With this one, I'm gonna use plaster again because I know that's gonna give me a good result. Up to now, the exact process also works for concrete. So if you wanna use concrete for this, be my guest. Maybe not use these stubby little inserts for where the bulbs are going to go. You probably need to use the ones that go all the way through, just because with concrete it's not going to be as easy to just take a sharp drill and drill all the way through where these inserts didn't go all the way through. So let's get this party started. I've heard adding some wood glue to your water you use for mixing is going to slow down the setting of the plaster, so I've also heard that you should be using a clean bucket, but you know guys, don't believe everything you hear on the internet. Ha! Ah. You're probably not supposed to breathe that dust, right? Okay, I think that is pretty good. Oh no, please don't start setting up. No. Yeah, that's not doing anything. Probably got voids and all other sorts of nasty stuff everywhere. Please excuse me while I wash my pants while this thing hardens. That could have gone better. I'm just hoping that the bottom side is all filled in and there's no big voids in there. Well, good surface quality. That's a good start. Ah, that always feels so nice because it's like so soft almost. Rounded corners. There we go. Look at that. Now if that doesn't look professional, I don't know what does. How to actually remove this big block from the rest of this plate because it's still keyed in with the lettering below. For some reason it's already moving. This shouldn't be loose. Oh, well that's easy. Now what? Here, you guys take a look. Where did I put this down? There we go. So far, so good. Of course, this swarf right here, this can just come off like that. Yeah, no voids. That's the important bit. This thing is fully filled. I have no idea if I'm gonna get any of this out. That's interesting. I can just rub these edges smooth with my bare hands. I feel like I should let this cure a bit more before I take any of this out, but I'm curious. Curiosity killed the cat. It might kill this cast. I'm gonna try to get the eye out. That should be the easiest one. So let's see, a screw here, a screw there, and we have something to grab onto. I may have been a bit optimistic about how easily I can get these out. Oh, something's moving. Yes, just the PLA. Okay, that was the plan. I might need to find a different way than pulling these out with a plier for the bigger parts. Okay, that's a solid start. I like it. I like it. Let's see if I can peel this away. The plugs are just not gonna come out. I might just have to drill them out completely. Yep, as expected. The plugs are not coming out. Yeah, okay, so the smaller ones are coming out, somewhat. Oh, all short ones. Okay. So these are 8mm through holes that we need. Don't worry, this is a cheap Chinese drill. This is gonna get dull, but whatever. It's fine. Ah, butter! Well, that's the joy of working with green plaster. Oh, that is nice. Okay, now the problem here is that this part, or this cavity, I guess, for the eye, did suffer some pretty gnarly damage around the edges where I pulled out the flexible insert. And that is very simply because this thing is still very green, very non-cured. I don't think the softness of this plaster is helping me pull out these inserts any easier than it would be if this was just hard. All I'm doing now is just beating up this casting. But yeah, let's just see how demolding all these other inserts goes tomorrow. Next day, this thing has hardened quite a bit. It doesn't rub off onto my fingers quite as much as it did yesterday. Today we can just keep on going and try to pull all these little bits out. Ah, oh no, that's a big crack. Well, by distressing the final art piece, the artist himself would like to point out how frail and fragile human life is. Or something like that, I don't know. You know, if you screw up like this, you can always blame it on, you know, artistic expression, right? So I don't quite know what exactly is going on with this plaster. Yesterday it looked all good, but now it's like it's almost not set up yet. I hope the wood glue didn't do anything to this. Some of the inner bits that I've drilled out are just still super wet there. They're almost like fresh plaster. So overall, I like the way this thing looks. I'm not quite happy with, you know, how the edges cracked off so easily, especially the R and A. As soon as I pulled the PLA plugs out, these inner bits of the R and A were just completely gone. I'm just happy that the O stayed. But for now, I think the best thing to do is to chuck this thing into the oven and just let it dry completely, because this is still very, very moist. I'm hoping that's also going to speed up the curing process because we're adding some heat, and then we can move on to finishing. Freshly baked plaster cast, anyone? Just like the last casting, lost a ton of weight. And the last thing I'm gonna do today is to give this a prime coat using this, well, primer. This is like for anything basic. It kind of looks like 3D Ease. Interestingly, I wonder if it's just the same stuff. But this is gonna soak into the top layer and kind of seal it off. And because we've cracked out the A and the R, so I don't want to glue directly onto the raw plaster. I'm going to want to prime it and then use whatever epoxy to attach these back onto the part. That's going to stick way better to the primed surface than it would to the raw plaster. So prime this thing, we will. This is gonna be a two-tone finish, and I've been thinking about how I can best paint this. So going off what I've learned from the previous tea light candle holder, I've realized that masking this off is not gonna work as well. It's gonna bleed through and it's gonna be a mess overall. So what I'll try to do is I'll start out by spraying this entire thing gold, and then I'm gonna take a roller. I know I'm gonna have to be very careful that I don't get any paint inside here, but well, it's worth a shot. Ah, yeah, look at that. It's so shiny. It's not chrome, it's gold. I mean, I wish I could say, oh yeah, this is the exact shade of gray that I've wanted. It's a bit lighter than what I expected. The white is really opaque apparently, but this is coming together quite nicely. Haha, haha, haha. The only thing left to do is to add all these sockets into all these holes right here and to add some bulbs, and then we're ready to light this thing up. Now the idea is because these things have this slight lip at the front, I could just pull these snug out the back and these would kind of seat up against the rim that's in the cast itself. That's why the plugs have this specific shape. And then I can lock them in place from the back. Now the ones that I had to drill out a bit more, I'm gonna have to do in a second. And one thing I'm realizing now as well, it's probably smarter to plug in my bulbs before I stick these down into the holes. That's going to be pretty fiddly, so let's do that right now. Of course, these are all LED light bulbs. This is the sort of G4 socket bulb that would fit in here typically, but come on, it's almost 2019. I'm not going to be using incandescent or halogen bulbs. It's all LED all the way. So that took a while. Now, I've inserted all the LED bulbs in here, and I've realized that because these bulbs are kind of soft and squishy, and the way they sit in the holder lets me just push them into the holes that are, even the ones that are oversized. I've just inserted all of these, and now I'm gonna lock them in place from the back using some good old hot glue. Wow! Wow, that is bright. I guess I should have anticipated this. This is 120 watts worth of LEDs. It's blinding to look at. And I mean, I've not dimmed the room lights here. In fact, you can see those are still on. So yeah, let's fix this. Just for comparison, this is what it looks like properly exposed. This thing is bright. Yeah, that is so much better. Now it actually looks the way it's supposed to. I gotta say, I'm incredibly happy with how this turned out. Now, I set out not knowing a lot about the process or knowing what I should expect. I made a ton of guesses about size, geometry, LED power, layout. This was more about the process and about discovering what works and what doesn't along there. And one of my favorite bits of the entire part has actually turned out to be this cracked end in here. And it's this rocky, raw looking mineral bit in here. Otherwise, this would have been incredibly bland and incredibly boring, just straight lines. And this makes it look more organic and more authentic. And looking at this video already getting kind of long again, I'm gonna do another quick Q&A about all the questions you guys were asking in the comments of the last video and the ones that you're gonna be asking in the comments of this video, I'm sure. All the parts I used in this project were incredibly cheap. Each of these bulbs was like 30 cents. The sockets were like 10 or so. Plaster, incredibly cheap raw material as well. This was maybe $2 to $3 worth of plaster. So, I mean, with the paint, this would be 10 to 15 bucks overall to make. And that's always a big goal of my projects, to make the stuff that I make as accessible as possible, not using the highest end, not using the most expensive raw materials, but actually looking at what the alternatives are and what you can use to make something more accessible and more affordable for everyone. So again, all that stuff is linked below, except for maybe the plastic. That's something you should pick up at your home improvement store. If you like the video, you know, thumbs up, get subscribed, support on Patreon, join on YouTube, do all that sort of stuff. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Yo, the video's over. Time to go check out the forums.